Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Now, remember, basically it is the modification of the intercellular receptor activity. When a ligand binds to the extracellular domain of the receptor to activate it. Usually 5 types of these signaling mechanism are. First is the intercellular, when the receptor is present inside the cell. So obviously now the ligand has to cross the cell membrane bilipid layer and enter inside the cell, and then it only can bind to the receptor and will produce changes or activating it. The remaining 4 are transmembrane receptors. Now the ligand binding and the channel opening actually occurs, remember, within milliseconds of the time scale. And the common example of these channel opening receptors are nicotinic subtype receptors of acetylcholine, then GABA, especially subtype A receptor, glutamate, and serotonin, especially 5-3 subtype receptors. So these are the few examples of these ionic channels operating mechanism of action. Now, regarding the G protein linked receptors, there were targets, what we call as effectors, because effects are being produced through these targets actually. And because they control different aspects of cell function, so these are 4 types. One is the most important was adenyl cyclase, especially responsible for the formation of cyclic AMP, and phospholipase C, responsible for the formation of an acetyl phosphate and diacylglycerol. Regarding ionic channels, especially which are responsible for calcium and potassium channels. And protein kinase system, they control the activity of many signal pathways, especially the cell growth controlling and proliferation of the cell, and also the contraction of the smooth muscle. Now, let's see some important characteristic of the ligand. Remember, it has affinity. Affinity is again depending upon the chemical structure of the molecule of drug. So basically, affinity is a chemical property of a drug due to specific molecular structure. To show the specific attraction for binding to particular tissue receptor. It is the specific attraction, affinity is the attraction, chahat, tendency to bind with the receptors. While after binding, capability to produce effect is the efficacy. So again, it depends upon the specific structure. So capability of drug molecule to produce the maximum possible effect through receptor activation. Usually I call in Urdu कि अपनी सलाहियतों का भरपूर इजहार वो हर एक का मुख्तलिफ होता है, ठीक है, थोड़े बहुत फ़र्क के साथ, ठीक है, अगरचे एक जैसे लगेंगे लेकिन थोड़ा बहुत फ़र्क होता है. So that is the efficacy of a drug, capability to produce maximum possible effect depending upon its chemical structure. Now, examples of the ligands. Agonist. Now remember, ligands are, if given from outside, they are known as agonists. If they are present within the body and going and to bind with the receptors, obviously those may be neurotransmitter, a chemical transmitter, etc. So agonist. Within the bracket, I have written for you people full agonist. Full agonist means which has the same capability to produce effects of the same magnitude or having same efficacy as the normal physiological ligand is having. So anyhow, when we say agonist, we mean full agonist. Again, it's a chemical substance which will bind to the receptors. So as I told you previously, obviously these are receptors meant mainly for the normal physiological adult substances. To the same receptors from outside, agonist is coming and binding to the receptors, and then obviously activating it and will produce effects. This effect or this response will resemble to the receptor physiological activity. As I told you, the idea of an agonist, now here actually it's a drug. What is an agonist? Actually it's a drug given from outside. Okay, so Idea is to rehabilitate the normal physiological state. So that is why their effect will be resembling to the physiological activity by the endogenous substance. So these agonists have two characteristics. One, full affinity, maximum capability to bind with receptors, and after binding, maximal efficacy to produce the maximum possible effect. So affinity is maximum, efficacy is maximum. That is agonist. This is the diagrammatic explanation of this. For example, agonist is binding to the receptor. It will known as agonist receptor complex. And obviously this complex will go to the transducer, and again this new complex will be formed of three: agonist, receptor and transducer. So obviously its binding will depend upon the affinity. Okay, so it cannot bind if it has no affinity. So affinity leads to binding with the receptor. So when this complex is formed, actually ultimately effect is produced, response is produced. Now this binding of the agonist with the receptors is usually only for the millisecond. It will bind, and for the millisecond I will produce the changes in receptors, will depolarize the receptor. So only millisecond binding will produce the depolarization, and then this binding is broken down and it is separated. But once the depolarization is produced, that will be transmitted through transducer, the response. But in few cases we have seen instead of weak bonds, which are ionic, etc., or van der Waals forces, there may be some strong bond involved in the agonist receptor binding, covalent bond. So because here sharing is occurred, it is one of the strongest bond. So in such cases, when the agonist or obviously drug will bind the receptor, because due to the presence of covalent bond, this binding will persist. It will not be broken down immediately. So binding will occur, depolarization receptor will occur, that will be transmitted through transducer as a response. But the agonist is still there because covalent bond is present there. So there will be persistent presence of the agonist. So there will be persistent depolarization. So once the response is there, repolarization will not occur, because due to the persistent presence of the agonist, receptors have gone into persistent depolarization. As we know from our knowledge of physiology, for the continuation of the responses, membrane must be repolarized again to receive the new depolarizing binding receptors. So that is lost due to the presence of covalent bond. So as I told you, this binding is irreversibly and persistently. And examples is succinylcholine and phenoxybenzamine. Succinylcholine is the sister of acetylcholine. So basically it is having two molecules. Structurally, two molecules of acetylcholine is synthesizing succinylcholine. So it will also bind to the nicotinic receptors of the neuromuscular junction as acetylcholine was binding. But it will produce persistent depolarization. So what will happen? Acetylcholine was binding for short time and was producing the contraction of skeletal muscle fiber. But when succinylcholine will bind persistently, after initial contraction, there will be relaxation of skeletal muscle. So that is why succinylcholine is known as skeletal muscle relaxant. Phenoxybenzamine, it's blocker of the alpha receptor. Alpha receptor is one of the subtype of adrenergic receptor, usually present at the blood vessel, etc., and producing vasoconstriction. But when phenoxybenzamine is actually a blocker of alpha, so when it will bind to the alpha receptor, it is persistently blocking the alpha 1 receptors. So now its natural endogenous substance, which is a norepinephrine, will not get the chance to bind with the alpha receptor and produce vasoconstriction. So there will be vasodilation then. and this vasodilation will persist until phenoxybenzamine is there. Now, after agonist, another terminology is partial agonist. Now, as the name is indicated, it's a partial one. It is agonist, has affinity and efficacy, but it's having partial activity. Again, it's a chemical substance which binds receptor. Affinity is full. Capability to bind the receptor is same as a full agonist, but as far as the efficacy is concerned, that is lesser than the full agonist, or what we call as submaximal. So it usually produces submaximal or partial response as compared to the full agonist. But what happens when it will bind to the receptor with full affinity but producing submaximal or partial response? At that particular time, it will not allow to this natural substance or any other agonist given from outside to bind to the receptors. So that is why we call it that partial agonists behave like an antagonist for the full agonist or for the endogenous substance. Inverse agonist, again English word inverse, opposite, but it is an agonist. So having again full affinity, but efficacy is opposite. Now we will discuss in detail inshallah. Actually, usually receptors are present in two states, two forms, active and inactive, and both forms are usually in equilibrium. Agonists will bind only to the active state, active form of the receptor. So when as the number of molecules of the drug of the agonist coming and binding more and more active receptors, the equilibrium will be disturbed, and inactive will also be converted into active, and gradually all the inactive will be converted into active and all will be utilized by the full agonist if the number of molecule of the drugs or dose of the drug is more and more coming. In the previous partial agonist, no doubt, dominantly they have tendency or affinity to bind with the active state of receptors, but they also have some affinity for the inactive. So what will happen? The active form obviously will try to produce the effect similar to full agonist, but due to binding with the inactive, opposite effect will be produced, and the total resultant effect will be lesser than the full agonist. Actually, that is the reason. Now here inverse agonist is having affinity mainly and only for the inactive form, only for inactive receptor I, inactive state of the receptor. So what will happen when the inverse agonist having full affinity, no doubt, but will activate the inactive receptor, opposite effect will be produced as compared to the endogenous substance or as compared to the agonist. Thus, inverse agonists produce opposite effect. Spare receptors, as the name indicates, spare. Naturally, they are not involved in the binding with receptor, but if the other actual involving receptors have been utilized, only then spare receptors will be coming into the game and will be utilized. Just like your spare wheel present in your vehicles. But by definition, what we say, these are the receptors present in a particular tissue in excess of the receptor actually needed to elicit the maximal biological response. Actually needed for your vehicle or four-wheel, but excess is present, one more spare wheel is present. Similarly, there may be certain number of receptors which are involved for the actually producing the biological response, but apart from that, nature has given to the few sites spare receptors also. Now remember, not all the body sites are mainly, for example, they may be present in the cardiac muscles or some sort of the smooth muscle of other side or nervous system, etc. only. So anyhow, in other words, spare receptors are said to exist if the maximal drug response is obtained at less than the maximal occupation of the receptor. Now this we will discuss in detail inshallah later on when we will discuss these spare receptors are the maximum response or response dose curve is concerned. Now EC50 and KD. Actually, this will further explain the presence of spare receptor. By definition, effective concentration 50, EC50 is just that concentration of drug that produces 50% of the maximum response. While KD, it represents the concentration of drug, obviously free drug, because here also when it will bind receptor, only free can bind. Plasma will bind drug cannot bind to the receptor. So anyhow, it is again that concentration at which 50% of the maximum receptor binding is observed in a tissue. For example, if any drug is having 1000 number of receptors, when it will bind 500 out of that, we will say that is the KD of that tissue or that drug. Now, in relation to the EC50 KD50, if no spare receptor is present, obviously EC50 and KD50 will be identical, because if 50% receptor will bind, that is the KD. So obviously 50% response will be there as by definition. But if spare receptors are present, as I told you, as in heart, now what will happen? Receptor binding is actually 50% you can say KD, but required concentration is much less than the KD, because here still the spare receptor present for which we have not given the drug. So EC50 is less than the KD. Smaller dose is needed than the total number of receptors available to produce the maximal response. Now remember, the sensitivity of a cell or a tissue to a particular concentration of agonist depends not only on the affinity, that is KD, binding receptor, but also on the degree of spareness, how much spare receptors are present. The total number of receptors present compared with the number of actually needed to elicit a maximal response. So only due to presence of spare receptor, those tissue is having more sensitivity. So that is why cardiac tissue is having more sensitivity than the other side. Now let's see the relationship of the dose and the effect of dose or the response, what we call as graded dose response. Now this curve actually is showing the relationship of, okay, as the dose is increasing from this side, effect will also increase, okay, until we get the maximum response. Here EC50 is indicating is okay, when the 50% of the response have been achieved, this is the EC50. But you see here the maximum response is getting after very much increasing dose. So obviously it will vary from tissue to tissue. But this is not showing the proper explanation of the dose response. For that, we actually will convert this curve into sigmoid type. So transformation of dose response data in a sigmoid S shape, sigmoid curve, instead of parabolic, sigmoid. Semi-log means actually we are converting log of only dose, not the response. So that is semi-log. In this way, semi-log curve, we are converting the dose into log. Now 0.5, 5, 50, 500, and now we will observe it will become S-shaped. The central part has become straightened. Now you can appreciate EC50 is almost exactly to the Emax. So that is why for practical purpose we are using semi-log curve for dose response curve explanation. Now potency, one of the terminology, it's very misleading. Commonly people may say potency Is that drug which is very highly effective? No. Pharmacologically, potency mean its ability of a drug to produce the required effect with the minimum possible dose. कम से कम डोज के साथ जो आपका मसला हल कर दे वो उसकी पोटेंसी है. ठीक है. So drugs of high potency generally have high affinity. Such drugs occupy significant number of the receptor even at low concentration. Now here I will explain you. We have given the example of morphine. It is an analgesic, but we know it is very commonly drug of abuse also because it produces euphoria. Drug dependence, drug addiction is occurring with the morphine. With the dose with which it is producing analgesia or producing euphoria or producing any other effect, that is its potency. If we modify the chemical structure, as I told you previously, after modification, it will not now remain morphine. It will be some sort of a new drug. So modification in such a way that we introduce 2-acetyl in morphine, what we call as diacetylated morphine. And you know, the name of diacetylated morphine is heroin. Very common name, heroin. Drug of abuse, used for addiction because it's producing high level of euphoria, etc. Now its potency is, it is almost 80 times more potent than morphine. What we mean? Of same level of analgesia or of same level of euphoria, the dose required by heroin will be 80 times less than the morphine. Or in other words, whatever the analgesia or euphoria has produced, this heroin, if we want to get the same level of analgesia or euphoria, the dose of morphine will be now 80 times more than the heroin. Now, have you understood the concept of potency? Now, from this curve, we can understand what is potency and efficacy. Now remember, this is the curve. 50% response will be here, and maximum response, for example, the 50 response is here, this is the maximum response. So to produce the maximum possible effect, that is the efficacy. But to get the 50% response dose required, this is the dose we will calculate comparatively later on. That will indicate the potency. How? From this diagram. Remember, maximum possible response is same with all the drugs, drug A, B, C, D. But drug A is requiring much less dose to produce the same 50% response as compared to the B, R, C and D. Similarly, B is requiring less dose than the C and D, and that's true for the C also, requiring less dose as compared to D. So how can order the potency of drugs? A is the highest potent, maximum potent drug. A is the maximum potent, more potent than the B. B is more potent than C. C is more potent than D. Or reverse order, you can say D is less potent than C, C is less potent than B, and B is less potent than A. So this is the potency. So another example. Now you can well understand this potency versus efficacy. Now maximum possible effect is efficacy. For A, this is the maximum possible. For C, this is the maximum. For B, this is the maximum. For D, these are the efficacy. Okay. So if we compare the potency, what we have seen, order of potency again, A is more potent than B, B is more potent than C, and C is more potent than D. But as far as the efficacy is concerned, A is having the same efficacy as the C is having, A equal to C. But their efficacy is more than the B and D. And obviously, B is also having more efficacy than the D. So, okay, with this discussion, now you can understand how efficacy is calculated and how potency is calculated. Apart from the linear type of, as we've seen, these were the linear type of dose response curve. Now, quantile dose response curve, frequency distribution, how much distribution is happening in a population, in a group. So, percentage of population responding to a drug. Now, let's see the example. For example, our aim is to get 10% fall in the systolic blood pressure. So, lowering the systolic blood pressure by 10 millimeter of mercury, how much dose different person will be showing the response. So, 1% population, this one almost with the 1 milligram per kg dose also is showing the response. So, as the milligram per dose increasing, 10 milligram, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, we are going on increasing dosage accordingly. And the percentage or population responding, lowering of systolic blood pressure by 10 milliliters of mercury, will obviously gradually here maximum population is with this. Again, the percentage of population will decrease. I will further explain with this much population requiring only 1 milligram. Now, this much population is not only 1, apart from 1, this does not produce, all these other does not respond any to 1 milligram. So, we go on increasing from 1 to 2, still no, 3, 4, 5, until we get 10 milligram. Then they show fall in systolic blood pressure, this much number of patient or population. Again, the remaining population not showing a response at all. We go on increasing, we reach the 20 milligram. Now, this much population is showing with the 20 milligram of lowering of systolic blood pressure. And similarly, we are going increase. And ultimately, this much population was that which did not show any response even within 90 milligram per kg of the dose. They respond only when we reach 100 milligram per kg of body weight of dose of that drug. Only then they show lowering of systolic blood pressure by 10 millimeter of mercury. And then we combine or we attach with each other, and this bell-shaped, this curve we see what we call as quantile dose response curve or Gaussian curve. This one, as the number is indicating, as the dose is increasing, number of patients is increasing. Only 1 patient, 5 patient, 8 patient, 11, 13, 17, 14, 11. Maximum patients were in the center. And now 100% all the patients now have responded with the maximum possible dose. Another terminology, or you can say this formula is used to determine the margin of safety of a drug. We have some standard. Our standard is with that dose, maximum possible beneficial effect will be there, and with the minimum population should show any side effects or toxic effects or death. So our standard is effective dose into 99%, toxic only 1%. Even with the percentage we want to see, toxic dose D1 minus 1 into 100, maximum possible effect. Now, another terminology which is left, that is superinfection. So basically, it is the infection, no doubt. But Why it is super? Because it is produced by some opportunistic microorganism, always waiting for the opportunity to produce their infection. And usually these are of resistant types of different strains. A resistant strain of, you will discuss inshallah in microbiology, pathology, Clostridium difficile is the name of the bacteria, or Candida albicans, this is another name of the fungus. So anyhow, these are the two examples. They will show and produce their effects only when they got the opportunity. And when the opportunity will come, when there will be alteration in the normal bacterial flora of GIT or respiratory tract or genitourinary tract, okay, usually by broad spectrum antibiotic, for example, tetracycline, chloramphenicol. Now what happened? From knowledge of physiology, we know there is a normal bacterial flora present in large intestine, our respiratory tract, or our genitourinary tract. This normal bacterial flora is also the bacteria, normally present, but they are the healthy one. They don't have any antibacterial or antibiotic effect. Actually, they are having probiotic effect, we can say. So these are beneficial for the person. So, but they are no doubt bacteria. So when we are using broad spectrum means effective against variety of or multiple type of microorganisms. Like example, tetracycline, chloramphenicol. We have already come across with the name of chloramphenicol, and tetracycline in your biochemistry you have come across with the name. Anyhow, when we are using, so not only they are showing antibacterial effect against the infective microorganism, but at the same time with the normal bacteria. For them, they are bacteria, so they will destroy these normal bacteria also. But what happened? These were the healthy ones. They were having probiotic effect. When this normal bacterial flora is disturbed, these healthy or probiotic effect, actually they were producing some defense against such opportunistic. Now this defense is lost. Now these opportunistic microorganisms get the chance to produce their infection. So infection of Clostridium difficile or Candida albicans is seen. Not only the GIT, large intestine, respiratory tract, or genitourinary tract also. With the Clostridium difficile, usually membrane is formed in the inner side of the mucous membrane of large intestine, what we call as membranous colitis. But because it is not a true one, this membrane is not true one. True membrane is due to some diseases, but it is produced by the bacteria, so what we call pseudomembranous colitis. Colitis, inflammation of colon, itis. Whenever the word itis will come, that will show inflammation. So pseudomembranous colitis, the whole name is indicating the whole problem. I told you in one of the lectures before, remember in medicine, name is explaining everything. So pseudomembranous, not a true membrane is formed. At what level? When there is colitis, when there is inflammation of colon. So what is it? Who is responsible for the production of inflammation? That is Clostridium difficile. So anyhow, Candida albicans, fungal infection, that you might have observed whitish spots inside the cheeks of some patient, especially the young children, infants, or in old age, in very old patient, whitish spots inside the cheeks. Those are due to Candida albicans, fungal infection. Albicans means white. Anyhow, so this is the explanation of the superinfection. So with this, we conclude our this concept building, our understanding, our making concept for the pharmacokinetic, pharmacodynamic, and now from onward we will start inshallah proper, we can say, are the regular lectures of the pharmacology. Thank you very much. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.